Check. 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 This is so slow. Check, check, check. Hello? Oh, hold on 1 second. Oh, sorry. Where's the phone? Here we go. Can you hear me? Hello? Hey. Yeah, he just emailed me. He said he's had a meeting that's running longer. He's gonna be late. You want me to call you back when he calls me? Okay. Yep. I'm at the apartment. Okay. Okay. Love you. Bye. Bye. Alright. Meeting's going longer than expected. I'll join you as soon as I can. Thanks. Hey, Rick. The guy said the meeting I'm currently in is going to run longer than expected. I'll try to leave as soon as I can. I'll probably be a little late to our Zoom meeting. I'll jump on as soon as I can. Thanks. Be nice if I get a little ching, a little extra ching. You know what I mean, Ricky? Nah, I mean, hopefully it's not a scam. go back to what I was watching.
With Moonstone and with Chalopine and Deltec and FTX, but we can do it with R3, which was partnered with, Fluent Finance, like pretty much from the very beginning, because R3 started off as a consortium of like some of the biggest banks in the world, and their backers are still the biggest banks in the world. And there's a lot of overlap between how Fluent Finance started and those same banks that back R3, specifically Citibank, HSBC, and Barclays. Which, if you know the history of any of those banks, not good. And then you have Bradley Allgood, the Fluent Finance guy, like publishing op-eds and Cointelegraph and stuff, being like, CBDCs would be great if they put Wall Street in charge. That's literally what it says. I mean, it's just, they're telling you, but no one's paying attention because they're like, oh, well, look, these Fed chairs are saying we're not going to do a digital dollar, and that means freedom wins in the good old USA. No, what happens in the USA is that Wall Street steals from everyone and funnels the money to the oligarch class and leaves everyone dirt poor. That's what they're going to do. I think Tether's recent overtures... Oh, sorry. I think Tether's recent overtures to onboarding the Secret Service and the FBI and all of this stuff, freezing all of these wallets on behalf of the U.S. government. This is them trying to curry favor so they don't get totally nuked by regulations and they can be like a de facto synthetic CBDC. And I'm sure USDC is looking to do the same, and that's why I mentioned earlier, like, what were these SBF political donations potentially really about? To be like, who, the people that develop the regulations and enforce them are going to be the kingmakers of like which stable coins are the de facto CBDC or CBDCs, right? And, I think that's something to look for here. I mean, which one is it going to be? I mean, like Mark brought up in talking to the Paxos guy, saying like he didn't think like Tether and USDC was going to make it past regulation. Like, obviously, in my opinion, that's what SBF and Chalopine thought, because FTX, Deltec, very tied up with Tether for a very long time. Like, very connected. So why are they moving from $1 pegged stablecoin to another? Well, the big difference between Tether and US Plus is that US Plus like overemphasizes regulation and CBDC compatibility and trust and reserves and all of this stuff. It's a trusted Tether. It's a trustworthy Tether, right? I mean, I wouldn't really say it's actually trustworthy because it's working with the same shady people, right? So, I mean, but they want that public perception to be there. And obviously, I think the gambit was to sell that to regulators and be like, look, this Citigroup-backed US Plus stablecoin and whatever is compliant and compatible with CBDCs. It can be used for trade, cross-border finance all over the world. And look, R3 in the UAE, and they're going to be the bridge between BRICS and the Western countries and all this stuff. I mean, I'm sure those conversations have been had behind closed doors, And then one thing I think we didn't mention really quick on why the digital dollar is going to be this and not like a direct issue CBDC. Like, if the Fed was going to do a direct issue CBDC, they're really behind. Like, that would take them multiple years to roll out, and they need this stuff a lot sooner.
Yeah.
So as CIA spooks, literal CIA veterans focused on this kind of stuff have said in publication from think tanks like CSIS, is like, we have to use the digital dollars that are already here. We can't make a CBDC.
And what does that mean? It means like they're close to structural insolvency and systemic collapse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So there's Whitney Webb, and if anything is clear, it's that the future of our economy hangs in a delicate balance. Whitney's insights about the impending collapse driven by debt and control mechanisms serve as a sobering reminder of the challenges ahead. As we navigate through the uncertainties of 2024, Whitney's warning of a potential economic turmoil, whether through cyber attacks or other crises, resonates deeply. The push for digital IDs and programmable money, cloaked in the guise of safety and convenience, underscores the erosion of personal freedom in our modern world. But amidst these challenges, Whitney poses a thought-provoking question. Could Bitcoin and cryptocurrency offer a viable antidote to the impending crisis? Right now, it's the best option. Also guys, if you want to stay ahead of the curve in the ever-evolving world of crypto and Bitcoin, don't forget to subscribe to our daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. It has expert predictions, breaking news, and top on-chain analysis delivered straight to your inbox, and you'll be well equipped to navigate the turbulent waters of the digital economy. Click the first link in the description to join over 50,000 others in mastering the art of crypto investing. Anyway guys, hope you all enjoyed today's video and that provided you with some value. I'll see you all in the next one, and as always, all the best.
Upward inflection, and downward inflection. Now you're going to need to do it opposite of what you think. And I'll give you an example.
Something crazy is obviously going to happen.
I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is what people fail to understand about depression. Depression is one of the most commonly diagnosed mental illnesses on the planet. Legions of Americans are currently taking some form of prescribed antidepressant. It is a problem that affects the quality of life of millions and millions of individuals every day. And it's also an issue that is generally misunderstood by the vast majority of people, including those suffering from it. Let's talk about this today. The principal way in which depression is misunderstood is that it is considered to reside entirely between the ears of the depressed individual. I call this the intrapsychic fallacy. And this fallacy gives rise to the two most popular approaches to intervention, neither of which, unfortunately, is associated with a very high rate of success. We can look at each one in turn. The first way this fallacy manifests itself is in the belief that depression exists in the brain of the depressed individual. You're probably familiar with some version of the monoamine hypothesis, which I have previously discussed on this channel. The monoamine hypothesis is the theory that depression is caused by an imbalance in certain brain chemicals like serotonin. And if this were true, it would make sense to recalibrate the balance of these brain chemicals using pharmaceutical interventions. Now, many people don't know that this hypothesis was actually recanted by its originator decades ago due to a lack of evidence. To quote the largest meta-analysis ever conducted on the topic, quote, "The main areas of serotonin research provide no consistent evidence of there being an association between serotonin and depression, and no support for the hypothesis that depression is caused by lower serotonin activity or concentrations." Link to the full study in the pinned comment. Note that the finding was no association, which means the meta-analysis failed to identify even a correlation, let alone a causation between serotonin levels and depression. What's more, antidepressants that manipulate serotonin have a terrible track record in randomized controlled trials when compared against an active placebo. And why aren't these findings more widely known? I'm not sure, but I doubt it could have anything to do with the fact that there is an entire rationale for a multi-billion-dollar industry that is predicated on the validity of that hypothesis. But I digress. The point here is that antidepressants are one of the inevitable consequences of considering depression to exist in the brain of the depressed individual. And the second way this fallacy manifests itself is in the belief that depression exists in the mind of the depressed individual. We could call this the cognitive hypothesis, which maintains that depression is caused by the presence of certain distorted beliefs about the self and the world. If these thoughts and beliefs were sufficiently restructured or brought into alignment with reality, then the depression should diminish significantly. And if this were true, it would make sense to restructure certain beliefs, like those related to the self-concept or associated with self-efficacy, using individual psychotherapy. And this isn't entirely wrong. Psychotherapy, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, is associated with a reduction in depressive symptoms. What's more, these reductions are typically more enduring than any reductions associated with psychiatric medications. That means that folks tend to derive a protective benefit from therapy even after it is discontinued that they don't derive from pharmaceuticals after they are discontinued. And certain therapeutic interventions might be necessary, though perhaps not entirely sufficient, to eliminating depression. For instance, it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to recover from depression while the critical inner voice is still active and highly engaged. And psychotherapy can significantly help to silence this insidious introject. In any case, the point here is that individual psychotherapy is one of the inevitable consequences of considering depression to exist in the mind of the depressed individual. Now, before I go any further, if you're liking what you're hearing, please consider sending this episode to someone who might benefit from its message, because it's word-of-mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. You can also hit the thanks button and tip me in proportion to the value you feel you've derived from this episode. I rely on your support to make all this happen. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I will also soon be starting a weekly newsletter, so if you want to opt in, you can do so on my website. And finally, if you're thinking of going to grad school, it's that season, check out my top-rated GRE study program at stellargre.com. I wrote all the content. It's the best on the market. You're going to love it. Okay, so let's get back to it. So what's wrong with the intrapsychic fallacy? Well, in my opinion, it largely ignores where the lion's share of depression comes from, namely people's relationships to their larger environments. Of particular note is the fact that depression is associated with being low status in a self-relevant dominance hierarchy. Life is hard at the bottom of the ladder. Low status individuals are more likely to have limited, if any, optionality with respect to professional opportunities and little to no access to sexual relationships. They may have few to no friends or close confidants. They may be ignored or even reviled by those around them. And while it is possible, strictly speaking, to be peaceful and contented and resilient at the bottom of the hierarchy, it is extremely difficult to do so. And those who reside at the lowest rungs of these hierarchies are typically those least equipped with the skills to mitigate the effects of their status. And guess who always starts out at the bottom of any given status hierarchy? Young men. As soon as you get out there at 18, you are at the bottom of the barrel. That's why this is a particularly insidious disease among young men, this kind of status-oriented depression. The fact of the matter is that many people are depressed because of the actual state of their lives. Unfortunately, the symptoms of depression can keep people mired in this state much longer than is necessary. This is not only because depression is unjustifiably pessimistic or even hopeless about the future, and so inappropriately assumes that the way things are is the way they're always going to be, but because depression is associated with behavioral inertia, which makes constructive, concerted effort to alter the unfavorable state of things less likely as well. However, I'm here to tell you that moving up status hierarchies is one of the most reliable ways of becoming less depressed, for the simple reason that life doesn't suck quite so much when you're not at the bottom of the barrel. This is probably why the intervention that is most consistently associated with the alleviation of depression in the literature is behavioral activation. Actually getting out there and doing something different. When people change what they do, over and above changing the thoughts inside their minds or the chemicals inside their brains, they stand their best possible chance of influencing their positioning within any given status hierarchy and their relationship to their larger environment, among other things. These increases in status can make life significantly more comfortable, pleasant, and rewarding. And while it is certainly still possible to be depressed when life is comfortable, pleasant, and rewarding, it's probably a good idea to first rule out the possibility that the depression is caused by life being uncomfortable, unpleasant, and unrewarding. Like, are you depressed or are you lonely? Are you depressed or are you unfulfilled? Are you depressed or are you undisciplined? Loneliness, unfulfillment, and a lack of discipline are not diseases. So why would you go to a medical doctor to fix them? In any case, it's always a good idea to rule out the confounds first. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've gotten this far, you might as well like this episode and subscribe to this channel. You may also consider becoming a channel member with perks like the priority review of comments.
So sorry, it's still going. Would you want to wait a little while longer, or would you rather reschedule? I'll wait, unless it's gonna be all day. Maybe this is a test to see how desperate I am for work. Modeling work. You know, but maybe getting work as a model will help my depression. Huh? What do you think? So we got the economy, we got leveling up in life. What's next? How to improve your voice and speech.
I have received many compliments about my voice. Many people want to know how to become a better speaker or how to have a more attractive voice and the way you speak, and I'm going to give you the insight that helped me achieve that. So first and foremost, you want to study great speakers. Study the people who inspire you to have a better voice. Notice what they do. So for example, one of my favorite speakers of all time is Prince. Also, the one who inspired me most when it comes to music. But the way he speaks is very slow. It has a nice rhythm to it. It's from a very deep and calm place, I guess you could say. And whenever he speaks, people would just listen. You never really seen Prince get cut off in an interview, and it was always quiet, like you could hear a pin drop. But what I noticed is that he didn't rush what he was saying. He thought about everything he was saying, and it made the way he speak more attractive to people. So I studied that. And I also noticed that people who speak very well know how to tell stories very well, and I'll get into that. So, first tip, slow down, okay? Slow down. You don't have to talk fast like this because it's not really attractive. Maybe some people talk fast, they sound smart, whatever, but slow down. Speak very clearly so that people can understand what you're saying, right? I was watching a YouTube video the other day. This dude was explaining something about a car, and he was like, the exhaust is so great and it's so boom. I'm like, what are you saying? Okay? So you want to speak slowly, slower than not. I'm not gonna say slower than usual. You may already speak slow, but speak slow in a way that you can communicate very clearly and pronounce your words properly. Okay? So you want to get that good rhythm. You want to know when to speed up, and you want to know when to slow down. These tips will also help you tell stories better. So when you're telling a story, when you're speaking, you can afford to speed up your sentences when you are just browsing over irrelevant details. But whenever there's something important, that's when you slow down to add emphasis to it, right? So let's say I'm telling a story, because you want whoever is listening to whatever you're speaking about to feel it. Okay, this is also a reason why my videos feel like a conversation. So, all right, now we're talking. It's like, I remember the first time I met my ex. I go into the house, right? For the first time, nice little vibe. So I go there and I'm laying on the bed, we're listening to music. She had a pretty good playlist. But all of a sudden, she starts walking to the edge of the room. And she's standing in the corner, and I'm kind of looking over there like, what are you doing? But I didn't say nothing. So I see she lifted this blanket over this box, right? She lifted it up from over the box and she reached down. I'm wondering, like, my mind has no idea what she's doing, right? So I'm just sitting there chilling. I pick up my phone, look at the time, and then I see her walking towards me out of the corner of my eyes. And when I look up, this girl was holding a snake. Now me, I'm not a very scary person, but I don't do snakes. Me and snakes have never been friends. She brought the snake close to me, and I swear, I kid you not, I jump up on the bed and I'm up on the wall like Spider-Man. And she was like, if you're gonna come around, then you're gonna have to be his.
Recording in progress.
Hello. How are you? I'm good. I'm good. I'm so sorry, and I just want to thank you for your patience. How's your day been so far? Oh, good. Okay. Well, tell me a little bit. Like before I start, let me just warn you. I tend to talk a lot. Um, so if you think of any questions while I'm talking, feel free to interrupt me and ask me. Um, but I want to hear from you in terms of like modeling. Like, how tall are you and how old are you? Okay. And how tall are you? 6'1". And what kind of modeling experience do you have? Okay. 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 And what would you like to do? Like, do you have any specific goals? Okay. Okay, so aside from making money, is there any, and there's not a right or wrong answer. Some people have very specific goals, like they want to appear in specific magazines, or they want to do runway, or they're sometimes very, very specific. Sometimes they're very general, and both are fine. I'm just trying to figure out mentally where you're coming from in terms of the approach with this. Okay. Okay. And in terms of the modeling that you've done in the past, how recent was that? Not recent, like more than 5 years ago? Okay. Okay. And you and in that time, or when you were modeling, were you represented by an agency? No. Okay. Okay, so let me kind of start with so I am a fashion editor and stylist. I really started my career as a fashion show producer, and I got into print styling and was represented by an agency in Washington, D.C., and then by an agency in Baltimore. And that agency in Baltimore hired me to help develop their runway division. In those days, that was a market. Basically, Baltimore and Washington the cities are very close, and it's considered to be one market. And in those days, models were what you call multi-listed, meaning they were listed with more than one agency, because the agencies had their own kind of area they specialized in. One was like film and television, one was runway, one was print, and there wasn't really a lot of conflict. But one of the agency that was doing runway at the time, or the big agency doing runway at the time, ended up closing, and the other agencies wanted that business. And so the agencies tended to become more what you would call full service agencies, as opposed to just specializing in one area. So the agency that was representing me as a print stylist wanted to hire me, or did hire me, to help come in and first develop their runway division and then their fashion divisions. And after that agency was sold, when the sale didn't go well, I left and started an agency of my own. And that was in the mid-90s. It was like 95. In the early aughts, my grandparents asked me to come back to Nashville, which is where I'm from, to come and help take care of them as they were getting older. So I opened an office here, and I ran the agency with both offices for a few years, eventually closing the Baltimore office because I was relocated to Nashville permanently. And that agency was open until 2010. And the market here was very different from what I was used to, and there just was not as much work. At the end, and it was a full service agency, we did really everything. But towards the end, a lot of what we were doing was a lot of physique work and fitness work and things like that. And so I have always enjoyed the developmental process, work with a model. I enjoy the social aspects of dealing with clients, finding the work and facilitating all those things, and want to get back into it. But I don't want to do a full service agency. It requires more than what I'm willing to put into it. my grandparents have since passed away. Now my parents are older. I'm taking care of them. I want to do something in the bottle management sphere, but I want to do something where the business can kind of follow me wherever I go. So if I'm in Los Angeles or in Austin or anywhere else in the country or world, I can still do that business because it's really more of a mobile office. And I had thought about really kind of just doing fashion, but I think that requires, it's very competitive, and all modeling is competitive, but it requires more, again, that I think that I'd be willing to give. And so I kind of went back to what I knew, which was booking guys for these kind of very body-specific jobs. And so that's kind of where I am. So the work would be what we call direct bookings, meaning that as you get developed as a model, clients are going to look at a website, or they'll use tools like digital composites or digital snapshots and things like that to make decisions on who they're going to hire. There will be very few in-person auditions. Because of COVID, casting directors got used to doing these self-tapes that actors do. And so a lot of people in the business are used to that now. And so with most of the jobs that I was doing in that area were all direct booking. So you can live wherever you don't need to relocate to a large market like Los Angeles or Miami or New York. You can be in the middle of the country, and if a client wants you, they're going to pay for your expenses to get there and back. So it's still highly competitive, but there isn't the requirement that you actually live in the market that you're working in. Because also, too, this kind of, these jobs, it's, well, some of the locations have changed somewhat, but they were, I had a couple of clients that were in Kansas City, in cities of that size. I mean, there were certainly clients in Dallas and in Miami and Chicago and New York and Los Angeles, but there were lots of clients, like I said, Kansas City, St. Louis, and whatnot. Now, with that, modeling is certainly, for the most part, about your physical appearance. I think it helps if you're smart and you somewhat approach this and treat it like a business, because you are a subcontractor and it is basically like starting a small business. It also helps if you're easy to get along with and you're a professional. When you create these relationships with clients where you show up on time and do what's expected and cooperate, etc., clients want to have you back and want to book you again. Unprofessional, difficult people certainly can work and have careers in this business, and they do. But they're, if you had to choose between someone that you liked and got along with and would want to work with again, or you had a job that they would be suitable for, you're more likely to book them than you would a person who it's not as easy to get along with or pleasant to be around.
That's fair.
And that's, I say it, and I think it's common sense, but sometimes, and I say it because I think that sometimes what happens with people, it's for whatever reason they expect models to have and behave in ways that they shouldn't, in terms of being demanding and being prima donnas and things like that, and nobody wants to be around them at all. I mean, I have a huge ego, but I know enough that people don't want to deal with it, so I leave it at home. The dogs get to witness it, and that's about it. Okay. And that seems to work. I can compartmentalize all of that, and it makes working with me a lot easier, I think, as a stylist and as an editor. Now, one of the things that you'll need, obviously, will be professional pictures, lots of them, diversified images of, do you play any sports?
Yeah, I've been in martial arts since 1995. The TV show that I was on was for Ultimate Fighting, and I haven't left the business, although I don't professionally fight anymore. I'm in the gym almost every day, and Yeah, so I would say kind of like, if you compare it to acting, I would probably say I'd be typecast, because I'm vegetarian, so I'm skinny. I'm not bulky, but I'm kind of like ripped, more like toned. And, I have like cauliflower ears. My nose is broken. I have a scar. And so, I wouldn't fit into like traditional modeling, maybe.
And I think that could be okay too. So would you say that you have more of a swimmer's build?
Yeah, except that I'm not as broad-shouldered. I'm more square in the torso.
Okay.
I have muscular thighs, and my shoulders are, I would say that's my weak point as a physique.
Okay, so that could be a value. Okay. What I typically do is I get all the guys to do what we call them digitals now, but it used to be it's a series of snapshots. It's a series of kind of straightforward headshots, body shots, and I can kind of evaluate where your strengths are. So as we start to develop a book, we can kind of play to those strengths, and then things that are maybe not as strong, we find ways to kind of focus on those less and work around that. But having said all of that, what I'm doing is a very specific category. It's a niche category. Having done the job of an agent previously, one of the things that I know that I don't want to do is I don't want to talk people into having and accepting work. So the deal breakers for me are a few things. I need people that want to work, that don't have body issues, they don't have issues with nudity. Those things are going to come up all the time, and if I had to turn down that work, whether it's paid work for prints or development or whatever that is, if I had to turn that down, I would be turning it down a lot, and it slows down the process. So that's one thing. The second thing is I need people that are comfortable working with all ethnicities. I need people that are comfortable working with both genders. I need somebody who can just as easily put on a pair of board shorts, walk down a beach, holding on his hand in an ad for like Salem Resorts. But just as easily, that person needs to be able to put on a Speedo and get on a cruise ship surrounded by a bunch of other guys and do ads for gay cruises. And those are just two examples. That's not all the work. But I need people who don't really care what other people think, because and I do understand that, but it inhibits that process. If you're looking at it, whether you're going to take jobs based on what everybody around you is going to think, you'll talk yourself out of working, and that's not what I need because it's just not productive. So, having said that, what is your comfort level around all of those things?
Well, yeah. So the nudity thing was something that I was thinking about. Because I would say more of insecurity issues with my size and things like that from past relationships. But namely, my ex-wife made an offhanded comment once, but. I would have to think about full nudity. I definitely would go easily as far as thongs. Are you talking about full nude?
Yeah, nude is nude. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess.
And that may not be something that I'm not pressing you for a decision right now. The whole point of the meeting for me, and I would hope for everybody, is to figure out whether or not this is a good fit. If it isn't a good fit, that's okay. I want to make sure that if we're going to do this, my expectations are clear in terms of what I expect from talent, and the same thing. I certainly want to. Those are not the only things. I want to make sure that I'm going over how this business works, how an agency works, and all those things, so that when you make a decision, it's a well-informed decision. What I don't want to do is kind of lay out these deal breakers for me, and then you say I'm fine with it, and then something comes up and it's like, well, no, I can't.
Right.
So, it's not to make you, you know, you don't need to make a Zoom today. I just, again, want you to just kind of be aware of, because what I can't do is I want to make sure that as I develop this management company, we are going to take bookings and jobs that other traditional agencies are probably not going to take. Now, I'm not interested in doing pornography because I think that primarily because I have nothing against pornography at all, but I think that it would hamper a model's career. I think that people look at those two things very, very differently. However, if somebody brought me an offer and an offer made sense, I would certainly present it. And it certainly doesn't mean that everything that comes across my desk is something you have to do.
Okay.
But again, if the criteria is going to be similar, and I've gone down this road before, I want to set it up at the very beginning that if it's nudity, I'm not going to turn down that work, and I would expect that you wouldn't either. If it's working with somebody who is a different ethnic, from a different ethnic group than you, or, you know, same or different gender than you, again, kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, I talked to one guy, and he only wanted to work with female photographers, and that's fine. That's what he wanted to do. But if you want to pursue this professionally, that's never going to work. Most of the photographers are men, and most of them are men, and a great many of them are gay. And if those are issues, you aren't going to do well. And so he had something very specific in mind. It sounded to me that it was more personal and more something that he would do better as pursuing as a hobby, which is fine. You know, if I had to turn down work for him because everybody that wanted to work with him was male, which would mostly be the case, there would be no point for me to represent him. So that was just one example.
Well,
I had another. You what?
Yeah. So, as far as that, I'm not prejudiced against anybody, regardless of race nor gender. If there's no pornography involved, I probably would be fine with nudity. You know, the modeling industry, from an outsider, has a reputation of taking advantage of models.
Yeah. So,
as long as we're on the up and up, and there is no pornography expected, or I don't want to like say something and offend you.
No, I mean, it's very hard to say what you
like
feel
if
like.
I show up to a shoot and all of a sudden it turns into something that wasn't explained to me, that would be a problem. But as far as everything else goes, you know, I haven't. My godmother's in the industry for 40 years, and so she, you know, she's gonna have my back as far as you know, guiding me for whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Certainly, you're right. The modeling industry can be glamorous and fantastic and all the things that you kind of see in film and television. On one end. On the other end, you're right, there is this, not even just taking advantage of models, because that certainly does happen, but treating models like a commodity, or not taking their feelings into consideration. All those things are present too. Not with everyone, but it does exist. For me, I try to get as much information going into a job before I accept it, so that when I bring it to you, I'm going to give you as much as I'm going to give you as much as it's given to me, so that you can make a decision. And if I'm bringing it to you, I probably think it makes sense in some way, which I'm happy to explain that as well. If you show up and you'll get on set and things will change. You'll have a photographer or an art director or whoever that tends to be maybe more creative and less structured. And as you work with people like that over and over again, sometimes you will expect that if you are working with the same person over and over again. And sometimes those changes are harmless. Other times, it isn't necessarily. I would personally prefer to be aware of any changes that are going on, and certainly if there isn't anything that's comfortable. And I would want to know what the changes are, whether you're comfortable or not. If it runs over, if there's anything that's going on that we haven't discussed, I would prefer that communication. And for a lot of reasons, it's for your own, and it's for the model's own protection to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of. If you're working longer than what's been agreed on, you probably need to be paid more. If something comes, and this happens a lot, again, you're dealing with somebody creative, you happen to be on set, somebody has an idea, and they say, okay, once we're done with this, would you like to do that? Well, some of the time that's fine, depending on what it is. But I also wouldn't want a talent to feel like they were pressured into doing something that they had not previously agreed to.
Right.
So,
I got you.
always, I mean, the rules always bring those things to my attention, and you always blame. Clients understand that the pipeline for work always comes through an agent or a manager, and if you piss them off, for lack of a better phrase or turn or phrase or whatever, you potentially harm that pipeline. And so blaming things back on an agent or a manager is fine. And I think that if things come up that you're not comfortable with, that's probably the best way to handle it. That way you're not necessarily in the middle of it, and it's something that they should understand.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
I'll just compare it to what I know, which is martial arts. Like, when I signed up for Model Mayhem, it was from somebody that I was following on Instagram. She said she got her start, and now she's an OnlyFans model, but she's a millionaire. So I'm like, oh, I've had, I wouldn't say dreams, but I thought about doing modeling because, like I said, my aunt's in the industry, and she always is telling me how good looking I am. She's my aunt, but so I signed up for Model Mayhem, and I got these offers that turned out to be like scams, whether it's for headshots or for like taking advantage of me or whatever. So when you messaged me, I was optimistic, and hopeful. But like in the martial arts, if you're in a town and there's only one gym and you go in and you have to trust the master or the coach that he's gonna guide you to in my case become a professional fighter, and there's a trust relationship there. My aunt did want me to vet you. She said to get your resume, your credentials, your references, yada yada. But like, you're the only gym in my town, so to speak. And I don't know if I should tell you this stuff because maybe now you think like, oh, I'm going to take more of his money or something. I'm just talking out loud. I don't want to offend you.
No, you're not. You're not. Right? Well, first of all, I'm not the only gym. There are other agencies that do the same thing, and there are other agencies that have divisions that do the same thing. I am trying to position myself to do this a little bit differently than they are. But I'm definitely not the only gym.
You're the only gym in my town, is what I'm saying. I'm not in contact with anybody else yet, but you came to me.
So, I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
I believe like things like happen for a reason, like that you found me and we connected. So I just wanted to ask these questions. About like what I said as far as being taken advantage of, because the other offers that I got turned out to be scams. So I was optimistic but also cautious.
Sure.
So far what you've been telling me, I appreciate, that you're looking to kind of like start up something, and I'm a good worker.
And that's important. And that's what I'm, for me with this, everybody that I'm looking at and talking to and considering is going to be a little different. I definitely want people that want to work and are hopefully going to enjoy the work. And just because you're behaving professionally doesn't mean that it can't be enjoyable and fun. But there are also, it's a delicate dance sometimes. This is a business that is based on largely, in almost every way, sex appeal. Now, when you're doing commercial lifestyle kinds of things, it isn't that way all the time, but that is when you're talking about fitness and looking a certain way, cosmetics, fragrances, exercise equipment, maybe not food to live on, but supplements that are going to make you look a certain way, clothing, whatever. Those things are those models that are chosen for those jobs. It is to some extent how much sex appeal they have. And your audience is certainly going to vary. I mean, for me and the models that I'm representing, their audiences for certain things are going to be straight females, straight men, and gay men. Probably not a lot of gay women would be, but that's because I'm not representing any women in this category. And it's, you're booking models that basically people want to look like so that they are attractive to other people, if that makes sense. It's that, if you eat these, if you use this protein powder, you're going to look like this and you're going to appeal to all these other people or whatever that is. It's, that's the whole advertising game, and it is what it is. But knowing that and being on a set where most of the jobs, with these jobs, you're going to be in little to no clothing all the time. That's the way that it's going to be. And you need to be comfortable being able to do that, being able to perform. And when I say perform, being, on set, modeling is, in terms of what it is not as easy as people think it is. When you get on set, you're the focus of everything. Knowing what your angles are and how you look best and all those, there's more to it. It's not rocket science. I understand that, but there's more to it than people think. And being that sole focus of attention is something that not everyone can do and do well. But when you're on set, it's also understanding different boundaries for yourself and boundaries also too for clients. When to be playful, if that's your personality, and then what that kind of means in those settings without carrying that too far and making it so that it's misunderstood. And some of that comes with age and wisdom, and some people have that wisdom young. Some of it comes from experience, and some of it comes from being self-aware. The last thing that I would want for anybody, of course, would be to be uncomfortable, which is why I like to explain all these things from the very beginning, and also to be taken advantage of. And that can happen easily if you're unaware of what's going on around you. Now, with the way an agency works, it's pretty simple. An agency and a management company makes money on all the jobs that you book. So we basically, and I'm going to do this in round numbers. You get booked for a job, let's say, and you get $1,000. We get 20% from the talent, 20% from the client. So if you're doing a job for $1,000, once the client pays, we're going to pay you the 80% balance after we've taken the 20%. And so you would get a check or Venmo or whatever for $800. There are some things that you're really required to do on your own. Well, I say required, developing a book, all those things, those are your responsibilities. They're not responsibility of the client, not responsibility of the agent. I, of course, can help facilitate those things and help facilitate those things as much as I possibly can. But those are kind of your expenses to bear. And those things don't have to be expensive. But, now if you want to pursue, let's say, acting specifically, apart from modeling, you need a professional headshot. Now, you may have friends that are professional photographers. You may have clients that you work with. You may be doing some sort of job. Let's say you're doing an art project for a client and they're not paying you, but they've agreed to do something for you that you possibly need. And that's a great opportunity to have them do professional headshots for you. You know, as an actor, you need new professional headshots at least once a year. If you can do it more than that, even better. So it doesn't mean that you have to spend money doing it, but it is your responsibility. I'm going to, again, help facilitate that as much as possible, but that is not something for the agency to bear. The way that fashion agencies work, and this is some of the misunderstandings, is when a fashion agency signs a model, whether it's in a larger market, not in secondary markets, but in larger markets, New York, Paris, London, Milan, they sign those models and they organize all the test shoots for them to get their books started. They put them in a model apartment. They put them on the website. They do all these things, but the model is not spending money out of pocket for those things, but everything is then deducted from their future bookings. So the model is paying for it. They're just not paying for it they're not paying for it out of pocket. Now, if the model, for whatever reason, doesn't work, they still owe the agency all that money. Agencies, of course, there's incentive for the agencies to try really hard to find models work, to at the very least, you know, make sure they cover those expenses. But the more that any model in your stable works, the more money you make. So it's incentive, obviously, for everybody. Now, of course, you from time to time find people that just want to get into this business just to say that they're models, but they're really not interested in doing a lot of the actual work. And therefore, it's not worth it on my end. And part of this interview process or meeting process or whatever is really to kind of glean as much as you can how interested people really are in the work part of it. Because it's not as easy in the beginning. You know, you won't see it as much, but once you, like, if we both decide to pursue this together, and I develop you and start sending your images out to clients and reaching out all that, it's a lot of rejection in the beginning. And it's, you know, trying to decipher. Usually clients don't have the time to break down why they're not going with you, because they're also not going with probably every job you get submitted for. There are at least 10 or other people that are being submitted, and it's usually a lot more than that. And they just don't have the time to break down exactly what it is. Now, if it's down to you or maybe one other person, they might be able to say, well, I went that way because of this. All that feedback is helpful. It's just you don't always get it, unfortunately. But there's a lot of, it's a crazy business where you are putting yourself in a position to be rejected constantly. You don't see it as much as I do, especially given that it's direct bookings, where you're not going, you're not actually going physically on auditions all the time. So you don't actually see what's happening on that end, which, you know, is kind of nice. I think that the rejection part for some people can be hard to take. It can be hard to take it, especially because I think people take it personally, and it isn't personal. It isn't personal at all. I mean, but it's also difficult to not take personally that people have chosen to not work with you based on your looks. I mean, I've seen it with almost every single model I've ever known. You know, getting into this business and knowing that your success is primarily based on what you look like, it does do something to people mentally. I mean, it doesn't drive them crazy, but there can sometimes be a bit of a shift. And if you are already, you said that your ex-wife made an offhanded comment, so you may already be somewhat sensitive to some of those things. And that's good to know going in, because I'm the oldest of 5 children. All my siblings were all different. Unfortunately, my mother knew that what I maybe needed was not the same thing as what my sister needed, and she was able to parent accordingly. I have 17 nieces, most of them I'm very close to, and I'm able to interact with them, again, kind of based on their personalities and what their needs are. I do the same thing with my dogs. You know, if I realize that you may not want to be called a baby, and I don't necessarily feel like I need to call a baby everybody, but if you're more sensitive to criticism and you're going to internalize that in a way where it's not productive, I'm going to deliver things to you in a way that hopefully that's not going to happen. Now, other people, subtlety just doesn't work with some people. You just can't be subtle. I like to think, try to be pleasant and cooperative and almost professional. But some people, you almost have to hit them over the head with it for them to get it.
Okay.
And that's just, everybody's different. And with somebody like that, I would probably be less sensitive so that they would get it and understand it. Because they just can't appreciate the subtleties and whatnot.
Yeah, don't worry about offending me. Getting divorced broke me. I ended up homeless. I was living in the gym. I found a new love. She broke me again, but it was less painful, Milton. It happened 3 times, and every time it was less painful. So I came to terms with it. I just wanted to, explain, I guess, a little of my thought process, but I'm too old to care what anybody thinks of me anymore. Anything that we do together is going to be a positive in my bank account, in my portfolio, whatever. So,
That's good. Yeah. No, I think that, being sensitive about things it's perfectly fine. It's better to know that going into it than, me saying something that potentially is harmful and finding out later. And, are you currently seeing somebody?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in a different place mentally, too. And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. I'm trying to make sure that I've covered all of the basic things for you. So what are you doing right now currently for work?
I teach martial arts.
Okay. Oh, cool. Okay.
I babysit during the day.
Okay. So you have the ability, or maybe I shouldn't say this as a statement. Should ask it as a question.
Yeah.
With what you're doing currently, work-wise,
Right.
do you have the ability to travel and kind of leave town for a day or two if you had a week to notice?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's another thing. I mean, there may be a little bit of work here and there for you where you are, but the majority of it was going to probably require some travel. And if you're not able to travel at all, I don't know that this is necessarily what you want to pursue. The other thing that is worth mentioning too is that when it comes to representing a model or talent, there are a couple of different kinds of agreements. I mean, in this particular niche category, this would be an exclusive agreement. If you were interested in other areas of modeling, let's say that beyond this whole physical and physique kind of thing, you wanted to potentially do some more, commercial or lifestyle kinds of jobs, which are largely things that I probably won't be doing. And to kind of give you an example, clients would maybe come to me if they were looking for someone who could do martial arts, but in very little clothing, so you could see what the body is actually doing when they are probably not articulating this very well, but when they're in motion and actually performing something, when they're actually doing something, you can see the striation and all those kinds of things. So a client would come to me for somebody like that. If a client was, let's say, a martial arts studio, and they're looking to book models or talent that are going to mimic the students, the parents, the instructors, they're going to go to an agency and they're going to probably look for traditional commercial/lifestyle models. So, and there are lots of agencies that do those things. If that's something that you would be interested in pursuing as well, we could look at developing you in that area too, and then look at placing you in agencies that actually offer that kind of representation. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to, but some people only want to do this. Some people are too short, too tall to maybe do anything else. I've got a meeting with a guy who's like 5'3", and literally this is going to be the only thing that he's going to be able to do. And I'm hoping that his body is as well proportioned as what it seems to be, but he really won't be able to do much of anything else. He's just too short. But for people that, as far as lifestyle, and I mean, he probably could do some of those things, but again, when you're looking at booking a group, you want someone, if you're booking a couple, you want, I mean, traditionally you want the guy to be taller than the girl. So there are all these kinds of things that clients typically kind of look for. And there's some kind of character modeling, acting, but again, there's less of that when you're kind of pigeonholed into something, because of, you know, your success in this is going to be based again off of your physicality and what you can't make yourself taller, you can't make yourself shorter. You can potentially gain weight or lose weight, but you also can't, you know, as a model, if a client is looking for somebody who's Black or Asian or Native American, then you're automatically not, you know, considered for those things. I mean, it is what it is. But there are other areas that you could potentially pursue if that's something that you want to do, and that's something for you to kind of think about.
Okay.
You know, there'll be more work involved, but if that's something that you're interested in, it could be worth looking at.
Definitely.
And I am such a talker. And you've been so patient. I don't want to over talk. I just want to make sure that I've covered everything that you probably need to know. And you may have questions later, which you're certainly more than welcome to, like, text me, email me, call, whatever. But I think that I have covered everything that I need to.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so. I'm going
Okay.
to, you know, talk to my aunt, my godmother, and, I don't know, what's our next step?
Well, the next step, I mean, really is for you to kind of out everything and figure out whether or not this is something that you do want to pursue. And this is the thing, too. There are no guarantees. I would love nothing more than to take on a certain number of models and make them all into, maybe not superstars, but make them, I would like to see them do as well as they all can do and achieve whatever goals they have. Not everybody, I mean, and I say not superstars, that's not what everybody wants necessarily. But really, it's to think about what you want to do next if you do want to pursue this. And then for me, it really would be, I would send you a list of the digitals to do, and you shoot those, and then I would take the time to evaluate that, and then from there, I would start looking at how we're going to develop your book.
Okay.
You know, reaching out to photographers that are in your area or at least close to get to, and I would have some specific ideas of what to do with you. Obviously, with martial arts, it would be ridiculous not to photograph you doing all of those things. And then kind of figuring out if there are any other sports that you maybe don't play but could fake very well, and that would make sense.
Yeah, definitely.
But it would be really, you know, once we do the digital and we figure out in terms of physically where your strengths are, is, you know, starting to work on your book.
Okay.
And then, you know, I'm in the process of developing models, and once I hit maybe at 20, I'll launch a website. I think that less than that, you need to have some diversity. I think that to do it prior to that doesn't necessarily make any sense. You only have one opportunity to make a first impression. And so I've reached out, not so much to advertising clients, but I've been reaching out to photographers, letting them know what I'm doing, because I want them to shoot the models that I'm developing. And I've had we've done a couple of editorial jobs so far, which has been nice through some of those same photographers. But again, I've not reached out to clients in that way because we've not officially launched. I want to kind of wait to do that. Again, so that when the website launches, the best guys, the best images, and kind of the best of everything. That's what the impression I want everybody to have
Nice.
from the beginning.
That sounds great. Definitely send me over the, what is it called, the digitals?
Yeah. And you can get somebody else to shoot it if you want, but it's very simple. You want to make sure that you're in front of like an empty wall. Some people shoot them on their own. They have a tripod or a stand or whatever, a phone. The shots should not be professional. The point is for me to really be able to see what you actually look like for real without any special lighting and styling and all of that stuff. And then I'll have the guys do it about every 6 months so I can kind of keep track of what they're looking like physically. And the other thing to keep in mind too is you don't have to be in the best shape. I've got some guys that I've been in conversation with that will be doing these digitals every couple of weeks so that I can track their changes. Some people are ready to do this now, some people are not, and that's fine too. During the pandemic, not everybody, but a lot of people either got fat or they got fit. I got fat. I put on more weight than I would like, and I was not as active as I should have been. But there are a lot of people that were eating well and were spending a lot of their time working out. I wish in retrospect that I'd been one of those people, and it did not work out that way. But as a result, some people who looked really great before that have some work to do to get back to that, and that's fine too. So don't as I'm doing that evaluation, I'm not being in the best shape is not necessarily going to be, that's not going to be my deal breaker.
Okay.
It's going to be knowing that maybe there's some work to do, and if I can see that process, then it's worth, I'm not going to schedule shoots for somebody who's not going to look great on camera. But let's just say that you came to me and said that you were interested in also pursuing some commercial and lifestyle type of work, and let's say your body wasn't in the best condition to be photographed, we can start pursuing the other part of it because that won't make a difference.
Okay.
So it just depends on what you want to do, and there's some things for you to think about.
Nice.
And you take your time to do that.
Yeah, me personally, I'm open to everything that we talked about so far.
Okay. Well, I will email the digitals to you later when I get back.
Cool.
And then, like I said, if you've got any questions that come up, certainly feel free to reach out.
All right, Milton. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for your patience. Hope you have a great weekend.
You too, bro.
Thanks. Bye.